So now that we've talked a lot about how to simplify and group our values, let's talk about how to organize them effectively in our own compositions. There is this really useful concept called checkerboarding, which I'm going to show you. So now what is checkerboarding? Checkerboarding is essentially the idea of alternating light and dark values, like on a checkerboard. Look at this shot from Dune, okay? See how the cinematographer has organized the values? So we've got light shapes against dark areas, and then dark shapes against light areas, sort of creating this alternating pattern across the whole image. And let's see, we have light on dark, right? And then we have this dark pattern next to a light pattern and light on dark. And here we have light on dark, and then it switches to light again here, alternating light against dark essentially everywhere in this image, right? Even here we have this dark against light, and then next to it is dark again against light. You see how this is everywhere once you start looking for it? We have this figure, dark on light, right? And then we have light on dark here, and then light again on dark. Even in his anatomy, it's sort of alternating, light and darks. So darks, light, dark, light, dark again, right? And this is very intentional across the whole image. This is essentially the idea of checkerboarding, is when you have these light against dark patterns happening everywhere, it creates sort of natural focal point that leads our eye across the image. This idea of checkerboarding through alternating patterns of light and dark and then dark and light, it's really useful when we design our own paintings. We can use this to emphasize certain areas or to keep interest across the whole frame. Anywhere that we want to draw attention, we can just create the contrast of light against dark or dark against light. Because our brain is naturally drawn to contrast, we can use this checkerboarding to create kind of like a visual rhythm. It's one of those things where once you start looking for it, you can see it everywhere. You kind of start to see it in literally everything, like nature, movies, paintings, and just images in general. And when you combine this with the value grouping that we talked about earlier and the idea of simplification, this is really starts to be really useful as a tool. So how do we apply the checkerboarding in like a painting, right? I want to show you a quick example of how I would do this. So if, let's say, I want to paint a portrait, for example, and I want, let's start with a middle value, right? Let's paint in the skin. So maybe the skin is around this value. And let's give this person a neck and a shoulder. Okay. Amazing painting, right? And let's add some hair on this person. Okay, so let's give this person a hair. Maybe they're wearing dark clothing. Okay, now we have this decently readable portrait, right? Like a profile view of a person. Now, how do we apply the checkerboarding idea, right? So this is already somewhat has the checkerboard idea of alternating, because we have the dark hair against the lighter skin against the dark clothing again. But we can push this idea even more by incorporating background into this with it as well. So we can have right here against the light skin, we can have a darker mass behind it where the skin gets, where the skin is light, we can have these darker values right behind it, and then once the hair is over here for the hair area, we can have a lighter area behind the hair, to contrast with the value. And down here we can, you guessed it, we can have lighter value against the dark clothing, right? So you have this light on dark and then dark on light, right? And notice how clearly that character reads from a mile away. I can zoom out like so much and it will read because of this light and dark pattern or dark and light. In this alternating pattern of checkerboarding, this is so effective for as a valid design choice, but also as a way to make whatever it is you want to read much more clearly. Okay, let's do another example of how I can apply checkerboarding to a painting. Here, let's just paint kind of a still life. So we have, let's say we have a dark table, and let's put a light sort of vase on it. And now let's switch it to dark again. Let's switch, let's say this vase has some flowers or plants in it. And these are leaves. And let's switch back to light once again, and maybe the flower is light. Okay, and then maybe we have some fruit on the table, like maybe a lemon or something, like placed here or something, right? Okay, so maybe there's some shadow, and let's make the background dark against this flower part. I'll pick the same value as the table and just paint around the flowers. This is another way to, I've used checkerboarding again right here to sort of alternate values, right? So we have like light and dark, and then we have the leaves, which are dark again on light, light and dark once again with the flower. So you see how this reads again from like such a far away distance. It has a certain like painterly sort of design to it, a certain appeal to it, right? Because of this checkerboarding design. Maybe we can even add some shadows to the lemons or whatever these are, spheres. And naturally, you see that we'll just have light and then dark, and then light and dark again. So this kind of alternating of light and darks happens in nature all the time, right? So I want you to look for them when you paint from references or looking at things from life or studying paintings. This is all happening, and you can really enhance that idea by doing it more intentionally, right? You can make something that is maybe has a checkerboard design to it even more obvious, and that'll give you like a certain appeal in your paintings. I want to show you how I've applied this idea of checkerboarding in my past paintings. Let's just strip away the color from these paintings for a second and look at their value design. So the image on the left, if I were to just simplify the value read, it's essentially like this. You have light, you have dark, light, and dark here, light here, and dark. And you have these alternating, you can see that now, right? Like this is dark against light, and then dark again. Pretty obvious, right? And by the way, in case I haven't made it clear, when it comes to the checkerboarding, you don't have to make all the shapes like a square or something, right? Like or evenly mashed. Like this doesn't have to end here just because there's a dark here. You can apply this to any shape really. Like if you look at the painting on the right, these shapes are not uniform at all, right? They're just sort of abstract, curvy shapes. But I have this dark here that's like a triangular shape, and I have this other shape next to it, and then I have this organic shape next to it, and then little round shapes inside of it. It's not really about them being uniform. It's really more about the idea of alternating value. So going from, dark to light to dark to light to dark, right? To light again. And that is what I want to really clarify is that when you're designing with any shape and you're placing them next to another shape, that is effectively checkerboarding. When you place them next to a opposite value, like if you have a dark against light and dark against light, like this could be considered checkerboarding as well, because you're alternating, and here I can reverse that. This would be considered checkerboarding as well. This is really just a design tool for alternating values and keeping the eye engaged throughout the piece. As you can see, I have these values, again, alternating light, dark, light, dark, light. This is such a powerful way to create an abstract value design when you think about it like this.